News, Kawhi Leonard said to be really thinking about going to the USA Basketball National Team's minicamp in Las Vegas next week. Spurs coach Greg Popovich will be at the camp in his role as national team coach, by the way. Kawhi could show everyone he's healthy and ready to be traded. He could also make the Spurs want to keep him more. Adrian Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne have the full story on ESPN.com. And Brian Windhorst joining me now. Brian, what do you make of Kawhi Leonard seriously considering attending the USA Basketball minicamp next week?
Well, this is a big thing that's been discussed in the league. Just how healthy is Kawhi Leonard? Not only what can you trade for him, what are you getting? And so this is something that people have been dying for in the league. Executives who are considering making offers for him, they have no frame of reference to know how he's developed and gotten better from the injury. So the fact that he's even considering wanting to play is an indication he's feeling a lot healthier, but it hasn't fully been decided that he's going to play yet.
You said on Zach Lowe's podcast that the Raptors are in the driver's seat for Kawhi. Why the Raptors over, say, the Lakers or the Sixers?
Yeah, it's sort of a war of attrition. The Lakers, Sixers, Celtics, and some other teams have not been willing to put in their prime prospects, guys like Markelle Fultz, guys like Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown. That has left the Raptors, a team that has made an offer for Kawhi Leonard, to be very interesting. They have young players, they have all-stars on their roster, and with the East opening up, they may be willing to gamble on a one-year rental for Kawhi Leonard.
See what happens. Brian Windhorst, thank you, my friend.
Shaq. Shaq and Charles Barkley have been teammates on TNT's Inside the NBA for 7 years, but now that didn't stop DJ Diesel from leading an entire nightclub chant something special about Barkley. Let's take a listen.
Barkley sucks, Sam. Barkley sucks. Barkley sucks, Sam.
Pablo, you were Barkley. How would you feel about this disrespect? And are you surprised by what Shaq's life at 46 looks like?
You may have expected me to text Charles Barkley, as I have done several times on this program, but I have not.
And told us about it.
But I have not done that here because I think there's a larger game at play, and I'm thankful for the game that Shaq is playing, because the part of this video that is so fun to me is Barkley has no rings right there with the rings spinning, because we are living in this time, Bo, where players and rings culture, as LeBron is ascendant and Kobe is on the way out and all that, I feel like rings culture may actually be sort of going away a little bit. And these men are the ones who are bringing down the tablets from the mountaintop and reminding us rings matter, which is ridiculous but fun. I want to argue against rings culture, and Shaq is allowing me to do it.
Well, hold on. Rings culture is never going to go away for a caliber of athlete like Charles Barkley was, because the champion will always have a significance in society. This is an age-old idea. So you're never going to get the culture out of there. The thing about this to me is Shaq does these things. You can't do it back to Shaq. Like, this is going to happen, and Charles Barkley is going to laugh. He might make some joke about how Shaq looked in the beater, but that's about all, that's all it's going to be, right? If you do this to Shaq, Shaq is going to ravage everything about your soul in return. And that's what's got to be the frustrating part about that one is, because Shaq can be very funny when he does this, but it's only fun if everybody gets to play along.
Right. Shaq doesn't quite take the joke as well. Charles Barkley, one of his great talents,
he's the best joke taker ever.
He is. He will be made fun of, and in fact, he should be a shining example for everybody in our business to learn to laugh and therefore become richer because of it. But Shaq, man, Shaq is like, I do want Charles Barkley behind a DJ stand.
I fear what music Charles Barkley would play behind that.
Those town halls had a different soundtrack. Remember those?
I forgot about that.
Magic Johnson, Bo, that's the next name. The Lakers president of basketball operations called LeBron, quote, the greatest player and, quote, the greatest leader in sports yesterday before revealing that the team will consult LeBron on personnel moves. Magic said, we're going to go to LeBron and say if there's a deal to be made for guys available. We'll say to him, what do you think about this guy? Bo, is this a smart move by Magic?
It's the move everybody in the NBA makes. Like, when the Warriors are like, we're going to bring in DeMarcus Cousins, They called everybody.
Right, Draymond's texting.
Right, they're talking to everybody.
Everyone.
Draymond Green is in contact with the owner of the Warriors more than probably any reporter or anybody else that comes close, right? Like, this is how it works. Magic Johnson had not one, but 2 coaches fired when he was in L.A.
True.
Yeah, he's going to talk to LeBron about what it is, because how LeBron feels about a personnel move is one of the top factors in making a move.
Absolutely. And I do think that the next level of this, though, because you're right, this is SOP for so many, at the very least, modern and/or smart and/or enlightened NBA franchises to listen to your
They've been doing this forever.
Yeah. But the idea of, like, actually we are going to completely empower the player and invite him to the table and not have any shame about that, I think that helps, because Magic is, of course, the former player who you described, and also because we are now living in this age of player movement where these players are, in fact, the movers and the shakers. Well, LeBron James will be graded, make no mistake, on his tenure as a GM when these 4 years on the Lakers are through. I think that will be a key part of this, too.
But he's not talking about making him the GM.
No, he's not.
That's the big thing. Here's the thing. Well, people will put that LeBron is GM thing on him a lot, just in large part because they would have put something on LeBron. But the dude in charge is Magic. And LeBron, for what he might be to the world, he ain't Magic, right? Like, for the Lakers, he is not Magic. They're going to be the ones to figure this out, but they're going to do what everybody does. You call the star and say, hey, what is it that you think about this move?
Yep.
Now, do I think that LeBron's going to come from downstairs and come upstairs and tell Magic, this is the move that we going to make? That's still Magic Johnson. You're not about to walk in there and slam the domino in there on him.
But I do think LeBron James has a certain cachet and a power, given Rich Paul, his agent, given his connections, where, hey, if I want a guy to play with me, it has to be because of me, LeBron James, even if Magic's Magic.
You signed a 4-year contract, and that kept that man in charge.
He is a human bag of rings.
Go to the next card. Daryl Morey. According to Mark Stein of the New York Times, the Sixers tried to hire the current Rockets GM, Daryl Morey, as their general manager, but were rebuffed. Pablo, what part of the process is this?
This is the part of the process that I believe is where you try and find a time machine and unfire Sam Hinkie. I understand why Daryl Morey was called. Daryl Morey is the executive of the year and all of that. But you know who else Daryl Morey was, Bomani Jones? Daryl Morey was Sam Hinkie's boss. Daryl Morey is Sam Hinkie's close friend. If the Sixers GM should be Daryl Morey, it might as well be Sam Hinkie. Why not? Bring back Sam. I said this as a joke however many moons ago on this program, and now I have the evidence that this guy behind me in the giant screen, Sam Hinkie, well, you'll see after we get this little video of Sam looking.
Why does anybody want to see that? Why do you want to look at him? Why do you want to do that? It was like Paul Bearer from Wrestling's Son.
You know he has a buzz cut now.
Wow, look. Here's what I realized as I heard you talking right there.
Yes.
Something my brother used to say to me when I was younger. You know what your problem is?
What is it?
You spend too much time talking to people who ain't as smart as you. Because the logic of
that is a brilliant criticism.
The logic of that just because Hinkie worked for Daryl Morey, since you wanted Morey, you should go hire Hinkie, is utterly preposterous. There's one huge difference between the two of them and their tenures. Daryl Morey did what he did in Houston without ever putting forth an embarrassing product. And every time people talk this stuff about Hinkie, well, you just had to think of the long-range vision. Morey is the picture of why what Hinkie did was so problematic. Because in Houston, you can't get away with doing what Hinkie tried to do in Philadelphia, right? We're not going for that as a city.
Daryl didn't have to do that.
Right, but Daryl is not Sam Hinkie. That does not mean to go get a lesser version of Daryl Morey just because you tried to hire Daryl Morey in the first place.
But the issue is that Daryl Morey, with Sam Hinkie as the lieutenant, Sam was a key architect of the James Harden trade.
Right, then maybe you hire him as a lieutenant. Maybe you bring him in as a lieutenant.
Why?
Because he's demonstrated if you put him in charge, your team will be a laughing stock. The difference between some of us and some of you dorks is we care about being, yes, you dorks, you're riding for the king of the dorks. How can you not be a dork?
Who display the behavior of dorks sometimes, to be clear.
What?
Sam Hinkie, though. Sam Hinkie and what he has done and what he can do, this was where he was going to go.
What the hell did he do?
A winner.
What did he do?
He inherited a team that was structured around Arnett Moultrie and became the franchise that has
and what else did he, hold on.
If
you're going to talk about what he did.
We're really going to relitigate the process on this program.
No, because if you're going to talk, the problem is if you're going to talk about what he did, you can mention the high points because there were highs, but talk about the other stuff, right?
There were mistakes.
Talk about what that was, and you can't bring this dude back. I don't care. No.
The problem with him having created a laughingstock that we all laugh at is that we did not have to laugh. I didn't laugh. I was applauding. I was applauding the logic. The laughing stockness is dependent upon the audience as well.
No, it's because you dorks are sociopaths, and the part that you ignored is that he had all those children there with nobody. Like, he doesn't understand people stuff, which Maury seems to get, and that is a huge difference between him and your man, Paul Bearer Jr.
The behavior of sociopaths. Next name. Papa John. John Schnatter Bomani. Let's bring it back. AKA Papa John cannot stay out of the news. This weekend he went on Louisville radio, WHAS, to explain what happened with the NFL dropping Papa John's for Pizza Hut, and he shared his beef with Roger Goodell. Let's listen.
You noted that the marketing company, you got rid of them. They claim they got rid of you after you made that remark. So that's a point of contention. Nonetheless.
Yeah, well, the NFL also said they got rid of us, and we got rid of them. We don't want to do business with Roger Goodell, period. And I don't want to do business with Roger Goodell, and we've had enough success where we get to pick who we do business with. And Roger Goodell runs the NFL, and we made a decision to get a divorce, and we did.
Bo, do you understand why Papa John has all this beef with Goodell?
Yeah, because he took him on and lost, and now he doesn't have a job anymore. Like, the thing I thought that was most interesting about what he was saying in that interview, he kept saying we. Is he speaking French? Because last time I heard, he don't work at Papa John's no more. They taking him off the box at Papa John's. If they wasn't so cheap, they wouldn't even be sending the pizzas out in the boxes that they got right now with him on them. What is this we that he is talking about?
He did step down as chairman of Papa John's, and by the way, in the Wall Street Journal at 1:30 a.m. in an article posted this morning that he expressed regret that he had done so, but I do think it's worth taking a big highlighter and circling Papa John's face here in the context of Roger Goodell, because how many people has Roger Goodell truly had unambiguous wins over? Like, who else makes Roger Goodell... Like, who else makes us smile when we talk about Roger Goodell?
Well, hold on. He had Raj when Rogers at his weakest.
Right.
Raj was shaky because the part you got to remember. But the part people have to remember is that in the politics of the ownership and everything during the anthem, Raj was far more on the player side, right? Like, Raj was the one they thought was going soft, and he thought he had him. But hold on. Papa John said more. Papa John tried to explain what was going on when he said the Colonel, the Colonel Sanders N-word thing. Listen to Papa John. Listen to how he spin this.
Believe it or not, Terry, the agency was promoting that vocabulary in that genre. And I made it real clear, listen, we're not going to go there. We're not going to talk about this. And they pushed me, and it upset me. And I just said, listen, other people have used that word. I don't. And will not use that word, and people at Papa John's don't use that. But they actually wanted to get into that vocabulary, and you can't use that vocabulary. You can't use that word. And we will not, and I'm not going to, and I have not.
Why didn't you, if you were going to say something outrageous like that, why wouldn't you have said, I think that Colonel Sanders used the N-word, instead of actually saying the word?
Well, I was just talking the way that the Colonel talked.
I was talking the way the
First of all, he said they don't use that language at Papa John's. That Papa John's in Northside Drive in Atlanta when I was in college, that word came up a lot over there. Now, I would also like to note in what Papa John is saying right there. He's saying that they called a consultant, and that the consultant was telling him to use the N-word, and he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Don't you fire the consultant? What kind of consultant is that?
Also the quote was, Colonel Sanders called blacks N-word.
Yes.
The idea of blacks as your noun, that kind of gives the game away a little bit.
Once you nounify an adjective in reference to a group of people, we are in a... No, the movie I was making a reference to was The Mac, which I am going to have to make you watch, because obviously you can't be trusted to watch these movies by yourself.
There is a cultural reading list that I have fallen far behind on.
Yeah, and that culture is cool. First one.
Please.
Extend. If you don't want me, let's make a trade happen. I understand it's biz. Posted Earl Thomas on Instagram. Pablo, what do you make of what's happening here between the Seahawks and their best player?
Earl Thomas is their best player. Earl Thomas has been their starting safety since like 2011 when the Ascendant Seahawks were the Ascendant Seahawks. And now he is finding that that doesn't really count all that much when you're 29 years old. And so I return to this fundamental thing about how players in the NFL can ever exert their will over management, which is you got to not play football, or at least threaten to, right? Like, you have to threaten to retire, which he did back in, like, December 2016 or 17, I believe. Like, this was a thing Earl Thomas had been talking about before. He needs to talk about it now again. Otherwise, why would they care?
Well, here's my question. Why not retire? Right? Like, I guess the idea is, I still got good football in me or whatever it is, but I have contended, at least for me, the money that they pay football players is not a fair trade for what I see in these documentaries and what you get at the end of it, right? Like, football is set up at a time right now where the last year of your contract, to a player, that means I don't have a contract. That means it's time to negotiate a deal. In theory, this is what you've agreed to, and so you might as well rock it out and just go through it. But I get where he's coming from, but you hit it. What you gonna do unless you quit?
Cam Chancellor played this experiment out before. Cam Chancellor asked for it, didn't get it until just recently.
But see, he had 2 years left in the deal. This is supposed to be where they're renegotiating. They're just looking at him like, nah, bro, we're gonna need to see.
It's hard times for Earl Thomas. Next quote. I've been praying for this day and finally feel like I made it back home. Wrote Hulk Hogan on Twitter after learning he'd been reinstated into WWE Hall of Fame after being suspended 3 years ago for using the N-word multiple times in a racist rant centered on his daughter dating black men. Bomani, were you surprised to hear that the WWE welcomed the Hulkster back?
I mean, I'm not new to this WWE, this wrestling thing, so there's no, surprise that they let him back. But they let him back without him ever owning it at any point whatsoever. And that's what's interesting. Is basically the WWE hit him with, yo, you too hot right now. You too hot. And then they looked around and they figured, people probably don't care by now. And then they threw it back out there. Like, this is never about any matter of principle. He just crossed a red line, and now they feel like it's, you've served your penance, I suppose.
Yeah, we heard some perfunctory apology from Hulk Hogan in, 2015 or whatever this happened, and it happened 8 years ago or whatever it was. But the idea that this guy still can be if you were to imagine Hulk Hogan being welcomed back into any given WWE arena, the reception would be deafening embrace of this man.
Yes.
And what he said on that tape, beyond the whole idea that Hulk Hogan was used as an instrument to help deconstruct and disassemble journalism in America, which is its own larger and also terrible story. The idea that this guy said all of those things in that transcript, and go find the transcript if you don't believe me, that is so much to have to not entirely own up to.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this, remember this about how it's going to go for Hulk Hogan. You talk about that embrace. I was at Turner Field once when John Rocker came out to a standing ovation. They traded him to the Cleveland Indians. His first game, he got a standing ovation. They going to play real American when Hogan comes back, and it's either going to be like it never happened or like it really happened. But no, he will be embraced. Simple as that. Next quote. Personally, I don't know what it would have done because I wasn't there. What I would have done because I wasn't there. Said Ben Simmons about the fight his Australian countryman had with the Philippine squad at the FIBA World Cup qualifier earlier this month. Let's listen.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done because I wasn't there. And it's a sticky situation to be in because you also have to think about, your profession, your career, and guys throwing punches at you. So, how do you defend yourself and how do you look at your teammates? But I'm always backing my teammates.
All right, Pablo, Ben Simmons is usually part of the Australian team. If he had been there, what do you think he should have done in those moments?
There is this controversy around Ben Simmons as to, is he actually a righty or a lefty? Is he shooting with the right hand? He should figure that out because he's going to have to throw a punch with the offhand once he figures it. Because this is not one of those settings where you can just be hanging in the background. Thon Maker, who I didn't know was Australian, is out here doing that.
Well, so the question that you wind up with on this is, where is Ben Simmons when this starts? Because if he was on the floor, he'd have no choice but to be fighting, because otherwise you were going to get knocked out. Like, that's all it was.
Correct.
But if we can get to that, can we get to that fight one more time? Because I want to show you something that's going on the Philippines bench. Because the Philippines bench, by and large, have been waiting all day for something like this to jump off, right? And so you see those cats. But you notice how some of those cats are more enthusiastic than others about getting there.
Yes.
Now look at who must be the point guard, that little short fella right there.
Yep.
He's like, nah, I'm watching from over here. Could Ben Simmons get away with that?
He is 6'10". He would have. I mean, look, He is, I think, actually he's the most famous Australian. If you are out here in this fight and you are not standing up for your country as the former prison colony, like, and by the way, we would have washed Ben Simmons.
You and Filipino.
Me and Andre
like
Blatch
Andre
and that
Blatch.
short point guard, we took a photo after.